So this is clearly a food that has been a center of the human diet for hundreds of thousands of years. Intuitively, we can ask this question, and of course, we'll try and support it with science. Why would this food be bad for us? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for it to be bad for us when it's something that has really inarguably been at the center of our diet for so very long. And when you look at the unique nutrients in red meat, I think this is a very clarifying point to move forward in your thinking about red meat and human health. And red meat is, of course, the meat that is most vilified. Now, again, we're talking about unprocessed red meat. I'm not a huge fan of processed meat, but we must not conflate those two things. So what nutrients are present in red meat that are uniquely present in red meat? And in fact, there have been multiple papers written about this. There are amino acids like taurine and 4-hydroxyproline. There are dipeptides like anserine and carnosine. There is the substance creatine, which we know is beneficial for humans in so many ways, perhaps the single most studied ergogenic aid for humans. And there are other vitamins and minerals which are uniquely found in animal foods, things like B12 and vitamin K2. Some may argue that K2 is found in plant foods like natto, but technically speaking, it's the bacteria that are fermenting those soybeans that are making the K2, not in the soybeans itself. So there's really no menaquinone or any type of menaquinone found in plant foods, and there are clear cardiovascular benefits to menaquinone. So in this podcast, I will go through one article which does a great job of summarizing those nutrients, talk about the benefits of those nutrients, how much of those nutrients you want. But my premise, the argument that I would advance in this podcast is that if there are this many nutrients that are found only in red meat that are essential for human health, optimal human health, how can red meat possibly be bad for longevity? And similarly, if your longevity protocol, which is based on a vegan diet, like many longevity quote experts today, including Brian Johnson and his teams, needs to have over 100 supplements to, in any way, shape, or form, begin to recreate the vast, incredible nutrient panoply found in red meat, you're probably doing something wrong. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. If you don't believe me, I will show you a list of the supplements that Brian Johnson uses. He's publicly said he takes over 100 supplements a day. Many of these are things that are found in abundance in animal foods. He takes a B complex pill. Now, let's just talk about this. Thiamine present in pork, probably present in meat of any type, just misrepresented in the FDA database. We've got folate in liver, riboflavin exclusively found in significant amounts in liver and heart, not so much in muscle meat. Vitamin B6, well represented in meat. Vitamin B12 is something we've talked about. So if you're eating meat, you don't need a B complex. Vitamin C, okay, that one's found in fruit. Now, CoQ10, that's clearly beneficial for longevity. That's found in heart, muscle meat from animals. Vitamin E, that's found in animal fat. This is something that's very often misunderstood, but bioavailable vitamin E, found in butter, found in tallow. EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid, that's found in animal foods. Iodine, that's found in animal foods. He's taking vitamin K2 in the MK4 configuration of menaquinone. That's found in animal foods. He's taking MK7, also present in animal foods. Lithium, you can find that in your water or sometimes in animal foods as well. Look, he's taking 2 grams of taurine per day, a nutrient that is found only in animal foods. Zinc, very widely found in animal foods and very bioavailable. Calcium alpha ketoglutarate, found in animal foods. More taurine, tyrosine, an amino acid found in animal foods. And so it's interesting to me that in what is perhaps the most widely publicized or well-known version of someone spending millions of dollars to improve their longevity, they're, number one, taking multiple supplements, over 100 supplements, many of which are found in animal foods, but yet insists on a vegan diet. Again, this is what his team has decided, and I'd love to have some discussion with him about why they've made that decision. And number two, it's clear that he's also left out many things which are important and clearly shown to be beneficial that are still in animal foods. Things I mentioned earlier, things like carnosine, things like anserine, things like creatine, which I'm very surprised to see him not taking. Things like 4-hydroxyproline. He's not taking an animal-based collagen. So many beneficial things that he's leaving out, and things that are clearly present in animal foods must be supplemented. So if you believe your vegan diet is better for longevity, but in order to get optimal, you must take multiple supplements, many supplements, to make up for the nutrient deficiencies in your vegan diet, and there is correspondingly a simple, easy, elegant, evolutionarily consistent solution to getting those nutrients, namely eating meat and organs that you've left out of your vegan diet, I think we must begin to ask about the sanity of vegan diets in general. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Furthermore, and this isn't something I'll discuss in this podcast, but something I will discuss in the future, if you want to gain muscle on a vegan diet, and in order to do that, you must take significant hundreds of grams of synthetic processed vegan protein powders made from pea protein or hemp protein isolate, getting proteins or amino acids in concentration that would be very difficult to get from whole foods. You must also question the sanity of a vegan diet for long-term health, long-term longevity, long-term bone density, and muscle growth. It doesn't seem to add up, guys. And the story regarding vegan diets and longevity, it falls apart when you examine it scientifically, but especially this nutrient conversation is interesting. So let's begin talking about the specific nutrients found really only in meat in general and how beneficial they are for humans. And hopefully by the end of the podcast, you will be even more hungry for that steak or that burger you want to eat with some liver or some desiccated organs or some source of organs, because those are providing these unique nutrients. And I think it's important for us to understand that as humans, when we're eating these foods, red meat is not just protein. Red meat is taurine and creatine and vitamin K2 and vitamin B12 and vitamin B6. There are so many unique things in there. And this is why I'm always a fan of eating whole foods above anything. So if you want a really good summary article for all of this, this is probably it, published in the journal Amino Acids in 2020. Hopefully I'll be able to get this researcher on my podcast and have a formal conversation with him. But the title is Important Roles of Dietary Taurine, Creatine, Carnosine, Anserine, and 4-hydroxyproline in Human Nutritional Health. In the abstract, the author clearly states these 5 nutrients are highly abundant in beef, have important physiologic roles in antioxidative, anti-inflammatory reactions, as well as neurological, muscular, retinal, immunological, and cardiovascular function. Of particular note, taurine, carnosine, anserine, and creatine are absent from plants, and 4-hydroxyproline is negligible in many plant source foods. That is a pretty profound statement there. Neurological, muscular, retinal, immunological, and cardiovascular function, with these 4 to 5 nutrients being essential, found abundantly in beef, not in plant foods. But red meat is bad for you, and red meat will shorten your life. Of course, the elephant in the room in this whole red meat conversation is the saturated fat raising your cholesterol conversation, and then increased cardiovascular disease outcomes with cholesterol. I have spoken about cholesterol on the podcast multiple times. Finally got a cardiologist to agree to come on the podcast. We'll have some friendly discussion / debate in the next couple of weeks about this. So stay tuned. So in this podcast, I won't be going into saturated fat from animal foods and the, I would say, misinformed notion that when you eat red meat and your LDL goes up, that's a bad thing. Because I'll be talking about LDL, ApoB, and the essentially making the argument that there is not solid evidence to show that ApoB is directly injurious to the endothelium in an upcoming podcast. In this podcast, I wanted to focus on these nutrients and why they're so important. They often get left out. People don't think about them, they don't supplement them, and they have clear benefits in humans. At least Brian is getting taurine in his diet, but as I said earlier, he's missing carnosine, anserine, creatine, and hydroxyproline, and that's really just the tip of the iceberg. So interestingly, as this article states, the fear regarding beef in the United States has caused a decline in this health food from 95 pounds in 1976 to 60 pounds in 2017. And yes, I would consider red meat to be one of the single greatest health foods in our human diet. And so the fact that we're eating less of it is bad. And if you look at other podcasts I've done, you'll understand that we're also eating more of other things. We're eating more grains and we're eating more seed oils. What's happening to our health, guys? It's going in the wrong direction. So there are many explanations, many hypotheses for what could be contributing to that. But at least in terms of food arguments, it's very difficult to make the argument that red meat is causing problems for humans when we're eating less of it in our diet overall and we're getting less healthy. Again, we're just talking in potentialities here and correlations. But the only correlation we find right now is that as we eat less red meat as humans, we become less. It's also important to note that vegans and vegetarians have repeatedly been shown to be deficient or have significantly lower levels of all of these nutrients in their bodies. Some of these can be made partially by the human body, but if you really look at the biochemistry in our human form as Homo sapiens, it's pretty clear that we don't make nearly enough of any of these things, and that getting them in our diet is very beneficial for humans. So not getting them in your diet as a vegan or vegetarian leads to deficiency and suboptimal levels. Again, not great for longevity. So let's start with taurine. Taurine is used to conjugate bile acids to form bile salts in the liver. This facilitates intestinal absorption of dietary lipids.